Yo, what's up? Dobly speaking. How's your day going? Chinese nationalists living in Australia turned out in force to welcome Chinese Communist Party third top-ranking official Zhao Leji to Brisbane. This is a Twitter tweeted by Drew Pavlo, an Australian nationalist. It's kind of a, he always posts some stuff against the CCP party, which I like, right? So this news is about, many a group of Chinese nationalists, to be more exact, the CCP friends, right? CCP supporters. They are welcoming Zhao Leji. But we have a lot of misunderstanding, in a column, in a comment there. And first of all, many people said it's actually Zhao Leji because Drew Pavlo at first, he was mistaken Zhao Leji for Zhao Leji for Zhao Leji, right? So, I'm gonna mention this, this kind of phenomenon, which might not be very good contributing factor to overturn CCP, because if you mock at the Chinese names, if you're mocking the CCP, well, it's good. It's good that you're mocking it, because I'm also mocking at the CCP, but for the Chinese culture itself, it's not something that's really mocking at, because the more you mock at the Chinese culture itself, the more you attack the Chinese culture itself, the more rebellious the Chinese people will become, and they might really believe CCP, or just like I said, this has been happening like everywhere around the world, because we used to have some Chinese descendant. They thought like the Western world is a perfect nation, but when they went to the Western world, they find that even if they hate CCP, but they still experience a certain kind of discrimination from local guys there. So they were like, many of these communists, they've not been taught in a rational way. They do not know, like, everybody's different. In the Western world, there are some people who really like you. There are some people who really dislike you, right? It's pretty natural, that way. So, but many people would go to the extreme to say that, well, even if I trying to overturn the Communist Party of China, even if I, is promoting these ideas publicly, but I still encounter some kind of discrimination from the local people there. Well, it's nothing just against you, because they are against us like everybody, because these people, they're xenophobic. But many Chinese people, they are not taught to think this way, to think in a very rational way. I'm thinking pretty rational, but many people are not. So they might as well give up the Western civilization hope, right? They might as well just go back to the Chinese Communist Party's arm, So these people are meant to be slaves, but we kind of understand why these people kind of betray the Western civilization, because they find that they would have more warmth within their own people. And that's dangerous. So Joe Pavlo seems like not pronouncing Zhao Leji's name right. He was mistaken Zhao Leji with Zhao Leji, which is used to be the head of the warrior diplomatic team. That belonged to he used to be a spokesperson of the Chinese Communist Party. He used to be the spokesperson for the so-called CCP's Foreign Affairs Bureau. But now he was dismissed, right? Kind of retired with glory. Although we have a lot of rumors about him to say that he was captured by the CCP higher ranks and he was executed because, he understands the secret. He used to be a spy, this and that. But finally, we know he was reassigned to some other position. He's not the spokesperson of the foreign affairs of CCP anymore. But, so we have a lot of rumors, for our anti-communist, anti-CCP campaign. We have a lot of rumors. So, but rumors are kind of widespread because people wanted the clickbait, right? People want clickbait. People want more astonishing news. So that's why the rumors happen, and that's why the rumors spread. So in my show, I would not always indulge on different kind of rumors. I would not thrive on rumors. Sometimes I might spread some rumors because who knows the real fact, right? You never know. Even if you read the news, it's just like Donald Trump said, it can be the fake news, but I can decipher something from the news on the superficial level. That's fine, because we're not deity, we're not God. We're just a human being, right? So everybody can, we can be at fault at times. It's nothing strange. It's nothing new, right? So then some people said, Um, oh, really? What it would look like if Pope turned up? Should Catholics be deported? Let people enjoy things. Sino-hatreds. It seems like we have so many infiltration to the X or to YouTube by this CCP power, right? So many people pretend to be the Western people, to be the Western, nationalist, but they would kind of speak good for the CCP, right? They speak highly of CCP, which is pretty dangerous. We have so many things among us. We have so many espionage happening in X.com and YouTube as well. Look at my comment, the comment section, right? You can see some of the account. They pretend to be the genuine fan of mine. They pretend to be the Western friend of mine, but actually there's something in favor of CCP. This is pretty dangerous. I don't know who knows or who owns this account. They might be the spy in disguise. So they try to play with people's minds. So you see that sometimes I do not really reply with every comment I receive because many of these comments are totally bait. They're just the trolls in a worse way because these trolls are probably controlled by the CCP. So I just disregard these guys. And one person named Steve Wooslam said, well, I'm shocked Chinese people are supporting Chinese people. Who'd have thought? Idiot. So basically, it's always, just like I said, as a Chinese descendant, right? My perspective on this is pretty clear. Every time I come across this kind of news, I would always tell you guys, right? Because everybody is not separating Chinese CCP party from the Chinese crowd. They're trying to tarnish the name of the Chinese people. They're trying to taint the Chinese people's reputation. You know what I mean? So, in their mind, if you're Chinese, you must love CCP. If you're not speaking loudly, about your ideas against CCP, like what I'm doing right now, right? You must be in favor of CCP. That's the extreme thoughts. So basically, I feel like these things are pretty stupid, right? They're just foolish. Because blaming somebody blindly just because his ethnicity is racist. And I'm totally against that. Who said every Chinese loves CCP? I'm an exception. Who said every Chinese people never know what's happening outside the world? I am an exception. When I was a little kid, I even know what's really happening outside of the Chinese world, right? Of course. So the thing is that many people, when they're trying to criticize CCP, they do not clearly know the target would be CCP, the structure itself. Instead, they're pointing out Chinese people, like Chinese people this, Chinese people that. I'm not trying to defend for the bad behaved Chinese people, right? For the Chinese criminals overseas, you can say anything about them, right? Of course, you still have to protect the basic human rights to make sure the fair trial is executed, right? However, you cannot just say, Chinese people, they're slaves. Chinese people always listen to CCP. Chinese people always dare not to rebel. Chinese people are the CCP slaves and they're soldiers. They will die for CCP. No. Let me tell you, if the War III really happened between China, Japan, and America, or Taiwan, right? Many Chinese people would actually so-called surrender. I'm not talking about surrender the countries, right? I'm talking about surrender from the CCP system to the foreign power to liberalize China. However, if you're talking about invasion of China, right, I really doubt that because, I'm against that because I'm a Chinese nationalist, which means I'm not a Chinese communist. I believe in Kuomintang. I believe that China should be a strong country, but a peaceful country. I'm proud of China, but I'm not proud of CCP. I can never be emphasizing more enough, right? I always, talk about this in my show. So basically, looking at this column section, right? They say deport this, deport that. They say these people are communists, right? So, some people, we have one person that is very sane, but it seems like this person's last name is Ling. This person must be Chinese. They say those are communists, not Chinese. Plus, they're unrestricted warfare calls for communists to migrate overseas and cause problems when they get call from MK Ultra Media and Education in Common Land. Wow, this is something deep. So basically, Yeah, so one person was really clever. She said, crafty, she said, weird when the CCP comes to Canberra. It's not a welcome. They are clearly protesting all their way to Parliament House, mostly the Falun Gong. I mean, many people just mixed up every concept together. CCP, Falun Gong, Chinese people are three entirely different concepts. It's like, say, gorilla, monkey, and crocodile. They're different. Maybe the commonality is that they belong to the animals, right? They belong to the animal family. That's it. So basically, I feel like many people, many Westerners, I don't know, maybe they're too arrogant to understand any Chinese stuff, right? They are such an impatient people that they do not even, they do not really bother to check the dictionary. They do not even bother to check the chat GPT. What's the difference between Chinese people and CCP? And Falun Gong, what's a Falun Gong? Many people think Falun Gong is a branch of CCP. No, Falun Gong is a religion created by Mr. Li Hongzhi. And he just combined a lot of things from Christianity and Buddhism, and he just created something on his own. In China, what that was seen as a cult. But in America, it is totally legal. In most countries in the world, Falun Gong is totally legal because in a real religious free country, you can just create your religion. But in China, you cannot. You can just believe the existing religion, and these existing religions were already controlled by the CCP. For example, in the temples or in the churches, instead of say your prayers to Maria, right, to Jesus, right, to God, you're saying your prayers to Marxists and Lenin and Stalin and Mao Zedong. That's pretty crazy, right? So the thing is that many Westerners, right, or not just Westerners, maybe even the Japanese or Korean, whoever who does not understand the Chinese political structure or does not understand the Chinese situation, just they are so looking down upon the Chinese people. I mean, they're kind of discriminators, right? They feel like, the Falun Gong is controlling country. Falun Gong is not controlling country. Falun Gong is persecuted by CCP. So that's why Falun Gong's head, Li Hongzhi, went out to America seeking for a political asylum, and he was granted political asylum many, many years ago, because publicly the CCP is executing its members. If he were to return to China, that would be a death penalty for sure. No negotiation, right? So the thing is that we really have to understand, in order to really protect our Western civilization and defend our country and nationalities, defend our pride, defend our people, defend our rights, go against CCP, right? We really have to be pinpointing the differences between Chinese people, CCP, and other stuff, okay? Do not expect, Chinese people can really respect you unless you can pronounce their names right. Well, if you fail, but have you tried? That's another thing, right? If you tried but you fail, that's another thing. But if you say, "Oh, I don't care. We're the center of the world, right? You should go away. You should be deported. I don't care." If you have that kind of attitude, let me tell you, more Chinese people that you can win them over, these people, sadly, they will return to CCP's arms for protection. This is pretty foolish, They've been bullied by another group of people, and they go to the former bullier of them. This is crazy. But I just want to tell you guys, right? You have to understand the differences between CCP and Chinese people. When you are against CCP, say clearly against CCP. Let me tell you, many Chinese people will join your force. But if you're trying to mock the Chinese group themselves, no, it's not gonna work. Trust me, Chinese people are smart. They're not be played by you, trust me. So they just want to be equal with everybody else in the world, if not superior. Why I say so? Because many Chinese people, in their mind, they think they're superior because they have a longer history, That's the human nature, right? But, you do not let them to be superior because everybody's equal, right? Who said have a long, continuous history is an advantage, right? Maybe that's a burden because you've have so many things in the past that you cannot break away from, you cannot break free from, right? So I always say, I don't care how short the history is with America. I don't care how short the history of Japan and Korea, because the origin of this history still traced back to the ancient Oriental culture and ancient Greek and Rome culture. That is a long time in the history. The Japanese learned from Chinese, and a lot of this great summarization from the ancient time Chinese wisdom actually passed down more on Japanese people than on the modern Chinese people. Because after the Cultural Revolution, so many people lose their faith. So many Buddhas, right? So many different kind of portraits, of the ancient people or ancient saints have been smashed by the hands of, by the iron claws of Mao Zedong, so-called 红卫兵, this kind of a red guard army. It's disastrous. So the Japanese and Koreans nowadays even understand more about the Chinese ancient wisdom than the Chinese themselves do. How sad is that? However, despite so many unfortunate incidents, right, I still believe China, I still believe Chinese, I still love Chinese. So many people say, I betrayed my ancestor. No, I never betrayed my ancestor, because my ancestor was born before 1949, which is before the new establishment of the new China made by CCP. How can you betray your ancestor when your ancestors are much older than CCP? Right? You know what I mean? So basically, I kind of, when see the Drew Pavlos, right? This tweet, right? This kind of post from X.com, I feel like I'm paradoxical. I always have this kind of feeling, right? On one hand, I feel like more and more Western journalists are covering the anti-CCP campaign, which is good. More people join our forces, right? And also, even like Miles Cole, even though he's a criminal now, I'm not really in favor of him or for his criminal activities, right? I'm not. But for the anti-CCP thing itself, that's a very good thing. That's a very good thing from him. It's kind of a marvelous behavior. It's kind of a kind of achievement. And he cooperated with Steve Bannon, right? And when some other famous guys, many politicians in America, right? Many famous Chinese, many rich Chinese, to create the New China Federation. Many people think that's a joke. It's not a joke. If you really are trying to go anti-CCP, well, many people say that's just for the business. It doesn't matter, because anti-Chinese, excuse my language, right? Anti-CCP requires fund. It is a business. Why shouldn't anti-CCP activities making money or generating income? It should. Because we live in the free world, we live in the capitalist. You can make it a business. So the business mode can grow. More people will join this business to anti-CCP. That's great. For really anti-CCP, you know what I mean? Okay. So I feel like it's a good thing that so many Westerners are actually joining force, right? Not the Chinese, because it used to be mainly by the Chinese ourselves and international human rights activists, right? But now, and some government elites in the past, like or some government bureau or some kind of commercial bureaus supported by the government, for example, Voice of America, or we have so many things, the propagandas going against China, right? Well, I would not use the word propaganda, because that kind of propaganda is usually used by the authoritative country like Nazi Germany and China. Excuse my language, yeah. So their advertisement campaign, their cultural war campaign against China used to be led by these elites or elite bureaus. You know what I mean? But now, how many people are watching VOA? Not so many people, right? Because the VOA Chinese channel just dropped down so drastically. Nobody's watching them anymore. Well, some people still watch them, but the number just like a quarter of, or maybe just 1/10 of what it used to be. So it's pretty sad, because we're living in a oversaturation of media war, right? People prefer to follow their favorite posters, the favorite YouTubers, instead of just going for some kind of old-fashioned media in a new era, right? But the thing is that it used to be this kind of anti-CCP movement used to be dominated and directed by the elites in the world, as well as some Chinese dissidents like me. Maybe many years ago, I wasn't a dissident. I wasn't a public dissident because I was still in China. There's no chance for me to get out of China at that time, right? But now I'm doing what I should do right now. But now many Westerners also join this force. This is great news because this would induce to the Chinese Communist Party's crackdown, downfall. I'm hoping for that day to really be really to be realized, right? On the other hand, right, I feel like it's pretty sad and confusing to see that not so many journalists really show respect to Chinese people. They still have a way of airy, like they say, like they're higher. They're some sort of higher people than the Chinese itself. No, you're not higher. It's just like higher brother. You're not higher. Like we're all equal. Not to say like many Chinese people think they are superior than you, but I'm not trying to stir up the controversy here, right? But you think you're higher, maybe they think they're higher than you, right? So the thing is that you don't really have to bring Chinese people down. You don't have to point out that Chinese people are foolish or they're just like, we have to admit that we have some old generation of Chinese people. They do look like, they do not dress up. They're not fashionable and their image sucks. I have to admit, right? Because in their generation, they don't really care about anything. So they dress cheap clothes and they just, and they might spit on the ground. They might do some disgusting things. I have to admit, right? But I also come across many Westerners doing the same thing. Disgusting things. They put their feet directly on the sofa and, have the footprint from the shoes and really tarnish the sofa, right? So, so many different things happen on the Westerners, but nobody pointing finger at. But if this thing happened on Chinese, it would say, oh, we don't like you. Go back to your shithole country. Things like that. So it feels like, I just want to know that if you really want to diffuse the CCP situation and CCP's power or bring CCP down, like I've always been emphasizing, you have to differentiate between Chinese people and CCP. This is best tactic. You have to use Chinese people to go against its own government, its own. If you like Chinese people, if you welcome Chinese people, if you let Chinese people shine, you give Chinese people opportunity. And if you respect Chinese people feel like they're totally equal to you. And believe me, they're going to pay you back. You don't really have to force them to do anything. They will defend America. They will do a lot of things. They will defend Europe. They will defend Australia, go against CCP. They might even become your spy. You know what I mean? So, but if you're still like, oh, you're mocking them. Or if you're like, oh, this Chinese, they look different, right? They're not speaking your language and their food stinks. Oh, I don't care, like, if the more disrespectful you go against them, the more loyal they will be to the CCP, or maybe they're not loyal to CCP as well, right? They just become a pragmatists. Maybe it's a double-edged, kind of double spy or dual spy, so he will become a spy of you, they will also become a spy of CCP. That's pathetic because you can win these people over. So I'm not trying to bring you guys, to blame you guys to say that it's your fault, right? But just guys, we really hope the world can understand more about what real China is, right? The Chinese culture without CCP. We have to face this one day. So that's why I feel like Donald Trump's granddaughter, she's already learned Chinese, right? You can see many world leaders, their grandsons and granddaughters are learning Chinese. In many places in the world, we have the Chinese schools. Don't get me wrong, right? Many of these Chinese schools called Confucius Institute, that is opened by the CCP for the propaganda purposes. So they do not just teach you the Chinese language, they give you a lot of junk. They could give you a lot of spiritual junk for you to love CCP. Do not buy that shit. Stay away from that. Don't use Chinese to learn maximum or Latin or rubbish like that. Garbage. They're totally garbage. Learn Chinese, go to their schools. I would reject the idea that you go to any of this Confucius Institute. You can learn Chinese by yourself. You can learn Chinese taught by the Taiwanese, not the mainland Chinese, to minimize your risk of being brainwashed by the CCP, right? And then use the Chinese language you've learned to go against CCP. You can do a lot of things to go against CCP or change CCP or democratize CCP. That's what we need from you if you want to learn Chinese culture, because that's really serving the preservation of the preservation of the Chinese culture. That's really serving that purpose. But if you learn Chinese culture, learn Confucius, but if you also learn Xi Jinping, also learn Leninism or Marxism, if you have to do that, at least you will know your enemy, right? But if you have the choice, please do not choose that. Because they gotta keep brainwashing you. What if that someday your brain has already really been washed by them and you will become the enemy of the West? I do not really see that happening. I really do not want that happening in the world. Okay? So as a Chinese descendant, right? I feel like, I feel like the world is becoming more and more chaotic nowadays, right? So there's nothing we as individual can do too much about it, but I think we can unite to make a force and at least to spread some awarenesses, right? So that's pretty much about this episode, and see you next time. Ciao.